Okay, so I'm here to tell you a little bit about something I built with Tailscale and Pulumi that solves a problem that I have probably once a week, almost every day. I'm not going to waste time on introductions, but if you want to follow me on social media and all that kind of jazz, there it is. So picture the scene. You have some cloud infrastructure. You haven't convinced your organization to buy Tailscale yet, or you are a startup and you haven't really thought about VPNs, and you have a bunch of infrastructure in the cloud, and you want to connect to it in a private network. Some examples of things that come up regularly when I'm helping customers with Pulumi and their infrastructure as code journey is they want to run a database migration, or they want to debug a container that's broken, or they have put their Kubernetes control plane in an AWS VPC in a private network, and they want to actually access it to do some stuff. Or they want to actually log into an EC2 instance or an Azure instance and actually kill a process. All of those things regularly come up in our community channel, and they're all a networking problem, and they're not an infrastructure as code problem. So I got tired of saying, this is a network problem, not a Pulumi problem. And I built something that uses Pulumi's automation API to largely solve this problem. So what does this look like? Demo gods and all that kind of stuff. So I provisioned an AWS VPC. Connecti supports 3 different cloud providers right now, AWS, Azure, and Kubernetes. But I've provisioned an AWS VPC, and you can see here in this VPC, let me bump this up a little bit. In this VPC, there is a RDS instance, a database that I want to connect to. And if I try and connect to that right now, I cannot because I am not in the same network. So if I run a single command to specify the routes that are in the AWS VPC and the subnet IDs that I want to create a Tailscale subnet router in, it will go ahead and do all of that work for me. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to know anything about how AWS works. And if we take a look in the Pulumi console, you can see it is creating a bunch of infrastructure. We can go in here and take a look at the activity. It's creating a bunch of stuff in here. It's creating the Tailnet key, security group, a private EC2 instance, all of the stuff that you actually need to make Tailscale work. This is essentially codifying the Tailscale how to use a subnet router in AWS page that's in the documentation, but it's all happening with a single command without you having to do anything. So it's going to create an auto-scaling group, and I'm going to wait for AWS to do all the things behind the scenes. And so it's going to boot an auto-scaling group with an EC2 instance in there, and then it needs to run user data. So this has actually created the infrastructure right now, but the Tailscale subnet router has not appeared because user data needs to run and actually install Tailscale and expose all the routes. But if we take a look in the machines here, you can see that I've also provisioned a Tailscale, a Connecti host in Kubernetes. So if I do Connecti list, you can see I've also created a similar thing in Kubernetes, and this also works with Azure, and GCP is coming very soon. So all of the major cloud providers are supported. I'm planning on adding DigitalOcean as well, essentially just removing all of the pain of actually getting these things up and running. So now that I've filled the time a little bit, user data should have completed, and it's created the Tailscale Bastion for me, and I can now connect to my MySQL instance, which I couldn't do 30 seconds ago, maybe a minute ago. So this is open source. It's written in Pulumi's Go automation API. Feel free to take a look. There are some bugs. It's not designed to be a production-ready tool. It's designed to really just solve quick and easy problems. And I can obviously tear all of this down with a single command as well. So it's a relatively straightforward operation. I think that just makes 5 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. Hope that's useful to some people.